So, people who are returning back to their business, have had a tough time with their business, or people who are worried about job security, or maybe have even lost their jobs. Um, what kind of mindset or attitude do these people have to adopt in order to move forward and to move forward successfully?
I think for some people, there won't be anything that you can do. It'll be completely outside of your control. And so that's just going to happen. And there are people who will lose businesses that they've spent, their life building up, and that will be traumatic and difficult. Um, I think there are also, there is, it's kind of, you have to be where you are and kind of pivot within that. So for me, it's about, you just have to be thinking a lot about, so how has the world changed and how can I adapt to that? And one of the essentially one of the books, which just happens to be here, actually, I didn't do this on purpose, it's just still there. So old Edward de Bono, with his lateral thinking book, is literally, I discovered him, I don't know, 20 something years ago. It's an incredibly dry book. It's like eating Wheat Bix without milk. Like, it's very dry, but the ideas are great. And probably this book, if I was to kind of pinpoint a single thing that I used throughout my clinical career, it'd be De Bono's lateral thinking stuff. Because often, you find yourself in a position where the same old doesn't work. Everything you've tried before doesn't work, or there is a problem and everybody says it can't be solved, or there is no solution. And what I like about lateral thinking is that it just doesn't necessarily kind of accept that. So it's about, again, provoking your brain to think about things differently. And, one of the easiest, simplest techniques that I used a lot for 20 years was, God, that is doing weird things. Was that?
Yeah, you were speaking pretty quickly.
Was I?
No.
Like, so one of the simplest lateral thinking techniques is this thing called questioning assumptions. So basically, you just make a list of all of your assumptions on a bit of paper, all the assumptions about a problem that you're dealing with, that you're making. And then I would just go through and you just look at the evidence, and you either try to confirm that assumption is true, or you discover it's just an assumption and it may not necessarily be true. And more often than not, there was some assumption in there that everyone had just assumed that wasn't true, and that was kind of the way out of the problem. So I think for people in businesses now, the thinking about their thinking is hugely important, and just approaching it with the same kind of analysis all of the time, that's probably not going to help. What we need now is really different approaches. I also think too, there is a real shift in the country in terms of supporting local business. There was a Facebook page, a Facebook group that started up, which just basically lists kind of local products. So that could be, everything from crafts to clothing to whatever, houses to whatever. I think they got 170,000 people following the page within a week. There's some guys, or a guy running a thing called Eat Local NZ, which I discovered when, actually, to be honest, my wife discovered, but she told me about, and then I discovered it through her. So I was getting angry about the fact that Uber Eats was still charging 35% to restaurants and cafes and people who are struggling anyway. But basically, Uber Eats just said, we don't care. So these guys are completely different. It's a local platform, and they charge 5%, and they do a whole bunch of different things to make it work for the venue owners, but also for drivers and for customers as well. And again, they have been swamped. They've got something like 600 venues in the space of a few days that have signed up. 100,000 people have signed up, because I think people would like to push Uber Eats away. So I think that people in business shouldn't underestimate this feeling we have as a country about supporting New Zealand businesses. And so I think it's just about finding ways to get what you're doing out in front of people. And it's mostly finding the right platforms for doing that. You know, the buy local product stuff is a great platform because now there's a bunch of people looking at it. And I think the Eat Local NZ is a good platform for people for food, for delivery and stuff, because there's a lot of people looking at it. And, you know, sure, you can just do your individual thing and put up your website and blah, 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 blah. But that's not what people do now. We go to some platform that aggregates all the information and brings it to us. I think it's about finding the right one for your business and just making sure that you're on it.
Yeah, and that's a really good example of you know, taking this opportunity to do something different and adapting to this
Yeah.
the situation, which I think
Well,
is a big opportunity for business owners.
yeah, I think there's a real opportunity now for us to just shift how we do business, and it's not about being xenophobic or anti the world, because New Zealand still we still have to find a way after this to be part of that broader world community. But I think that what this has taught us is that the way we've done business before, those long, complicated supply chains where you take an order and it's shipped from some other country, that's pretty precarious, you know, and no one would have thought that before, because the most you'd think is, oh, well, it's going to be maybe 2 weeks, it'll be a bit longer to get here. Now everyone's kind of thinking, it's not about xenophobia, it's just being pragmatic to have a business which can survive these events in the future. And, you know, this is not the first virus that has appeared in the world, and more will appear in years to come. And so it's about having some robustness in our economy so that we can deal with these sorts of things. You know, tourism has mostly catered to people from overseas, and so we do that swap, right? We go there, they come here. So now the tourism industry needs to be thinking, and they are thinking a lot, about how we can reconnect with stuff in our own country. You know, what's our equivalent of running with the bulls? What's our leading therapies, or all that kind of stuff?
Hmm. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some exciting things happening, I think, some really innovative and exciting changes. I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'm sort of, my hope is, I stopped reading opinion pieces because mostly they're gloomy and they made me feel bad. But one that I read which really kind of resonated was, I can't remember what it was, but it was a bloke basically saying that he's afraid, but the thing he's most afraid of isn't coronavirus, and it's not the immediate economic effect of all of this. It's that after this, we just rebuild the world that was before. Like, that's his biggest fear, that this will happen to us, that capitalism will get kneecapped, and then we'll just build it back up again. And so I think that's probably my biggest fear too. You know, I think we have this opportunity that no one ever expected to rebuild a better, fairer, kinder economy. You know, an economy where people actually get paid what they're worth. We've all become, suddenly people who stack supermarket shelves have more value than most of the people that have got paid $1 squillion more than they ever have. It'd be kind of nice if those people were paid adequately for what they did. It would be good if we kind of, you know, if you look at the economic impact of this and what it may do in terms of unemployment, then how do we survive as a country when that could happen? My hope is that because more people now have been pushed into that position, there's something like 1 million people in this country at the moment on a benefit if they're taking the government's wage subsidy thing. And my hope is that more people are now thinking, oh, maybe government isn't bad. Maybe safety nets aren't bad. Maybe having the government provide you with a monetary safety net doesn't make you lazy and want to stop working. Maybe it just helps you feed your family. And so maybe we'll look at things like, you know, a wealth tax and capital gains tax and some of those sorts of things, so that rather than just rebuilding that system where the gains get focused into a small group, we can distribute that stuff more fairly and have a better economy for everybody.